Yeah, so this week, on the seminar, we have Marieke. We're very pleased to have her. She's at Corvinus, so think of this as an opportunity to start building long-term collaborations. I think you have.
Thank you very much for coming and for having me. Yes, I'm in Corvinus. Actually, I'm sharing the office with Martin and Julie and whenever you want to talk about something related to this or other topics that I'm working on, feel free to write me or come to my place. So today I'm talking about dynamic consistency and about ambiguous Dutch auctions. So let me just start with this nice picture. So Dutch auction is just a decreasing price auction. So some of you have already seen those kind of pictures before. So there's a clock that's basically running down, it's counting a price. The seller starts with a relatively high price and then it's decreasing the price until one of the bidders. That's a standard Dutch auction, decreasing price auction. And it's used, for example, in flower markets. That's why you have all the nice flowers here. And usually in the classical setting, the Dutch auction first price the bid auction as a physical equivalent.
Sorry, they are single item auctions, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I'm just looking at here. So they are strategically equivalent, so they should give the same revenue to the seller and the buyers. However, there's some experimental evidence that this doesn't hold. And I just give you one example here. And they run an experiment where they basically sold, I think it was magic cards online with different auction formats, and they showed that the Dutch auction generates higher revenue than the first price auction. So there's this experimental evidence that this revenue equivalence does not hold between Dutch auction and first price auction. They also compare second price and English auction, but I focus only on Dutch auction here. So the question is why? How can we incorporate this? Theoretically, can we find a theoretical explanation for it? And there are also already some theoretical approaches. There is a relatively old approach that basically shows that this equivalence only holds under dynamically consistent crafting behavior. And then there's some more newer literature that shows that it doesn't hold an ambiguity. And I will explain in a moment what I mean with ambiguity and why this is related to dynamic inconsistency. But basically, what the literature so far is doing is looking at a setting where we have ambiguity and dynamic inconsistency. And then they show that the Dutch auction can gives a higher revenue for the seller than compared to the first auction. So what I want to do in this paper is basically trying to separate these two, seeing if we can have also the way this revenue equivalence result if we have ambiguity but dynamic consistency. Yes.
Can you tell what is dynamic consistency in this?
Yes. 2 slides. So let me first say what ambiguity is and then explain you why we have to play with dynamic consistency. So with ambiguity, I mean uncertainty that cannot be captured by a single probability measure. So if you say about like situations like a coin toss roulette, there we know exactly the probability of certain events. So that's what risk is about, and ambiguity is about uncertainty that we don't have one probability measure. The basic ideas of this is that either you just don't have enough information because it's a rare event that's happening, or because you don't have a lot of experiences in the auction setting, for example, as a buyer. I might not have so much experience with the situation, and therefore I might have ambiguity about the evaluation of other buyers. There's a large literature about ambiguity in general in different settings, about ambiguity aversion, ambiguity loving, empirical, experimental, and theoretical. I don't want to go too much into details. I will explain you later how exactly I model ambiguity here. But the basic idea is that the buyers don't know exactly the distribution of the valuation of the other buyer.
But they know the family of distributions.
Exactly. They have a set of this possible distribution. And more precisely, they will have like an epsilon, so it's an epsilon ball. So I will be more precise on this later, but basically the seller has more information just because he has more experience, so he knows the distribution, but the buyer has an epsilon combination.
What would be the gist of this Gilmore-Schmeider proposition that the worst case So why is that exactly?
Okay, so there are multiple ways to think how players could then deal with a multiple set of distributions, if you have a set of distributions. Before Schneiter has this max-min thing. There are also approaches where you have like called alpha max-min, you have a weighted sum of the worst and the best case. There's also something where you have like a second order distribution over the set of distributions and then some inversion parameter like for risk. There's a concave function. The issue is as soon as you go away from max-min, it's getting really, really complex and it's really hard to solve for general models. And the other models usually, like if you increase ambiguity aversion, so if players are getting more ambiguity aversion, you somehow converge to the result to get this max. So you can see this max-min at the like as benchmark, what you're getting in the extreme case of ambiguity aversion, and then you can compare what's happening without ambiguity, what's happening with the extreme ambiguity, to get an idea in which direction this pushes the result. Okay.
Is ambiguity the same thing that is also known as fundamental uncertainty or Knightian uncertainty?
Yes.
So that's
That's just a different names. Okay, so why do we have to care about dynamic consistency or inconsistency? Because in many cells, usually in settings, dynamic settings with ambiguity, we can have dynamically inconsistent behavior. And this comes exactly from this worst case consideration. Because just imagine you learn that your worst case cannot longer occur, then your new worst case would put the highest possible probability of the second worst case event. So this implies that your new worst case is not a Bayesian update of the ex-ante worst case. And that can imply dynamically inconsistent behavior. So in our setting, this would mean that the buyer makes a plan, okay, I will wait until this price, but then perhaps some data stage, you think, oh no, I already accept the price right now, I don't waiting for the plan, I'm not following my usual plan from the beginning, I'm already stopping here. Yes.
So again, to put the two together,
Yes.
Gilbert and Schneider state that anything other than their sort of solution would be too complicated.
No, that's not what I'm saying. It's just they were the first who had this max-min. And then the other approaches was more general ideas like the alpha max-min and these.
Is there a justification for maximum? Beyond complexity?
You mean there's, as far as I know, there is no real, like if you think about an experimental composition, seeing which of them fits better. I don't know. As far as I know, though, I don't think that there's anything that's really comparing this. It's just basically you have to know in some settings we are basically this is an extreme case of the other. But the dynamic inconsistency occurs in all the other models.
But once maximum, then there comes dynamic inconsistency because of
That's the other models as well. So also in the second order, we believe we have a dynamic issue with dynamic inconsistency, and also the alpha maximum. So that does not rely on the max-min model. It also does not rely on the updating rule. So of course, if we have a set of distributions, we have to think how to update this, and I will explain you to this in a moment. There are several updating rules in literature, and almost everything leads to dynamic inconsistent behavior. The only set of updating rules where you don't have dynamic inconsistency is basically an updating rule that assumes that you're only updating ex-ante beliefs that are consistent, like that keep your behavior dynamic consistency. So basically you're ignoring at the interim stage beliefs that would give you a different worst case. That's the only updating rule I know in the ambiguity setting that gives you dynamic consistent behavior. Everything else always gives you, at least in many situations, gives you dynamic consistency. That's a general issue. And the basic intuition is that the new information changes your case.
And but what is the new information?
But you, sorry,
What is new information? Because it's going down and okay, so I don't see what, because if it's going up, then I see that okay, people are really.
Okay. If I see like new information is basically information about the valuation of the other buyer, because if I see that the other buyer has not accepted the price so far, his valuation has to be lower than the types would have accepted the valuation so far. Okay, I hope this becomes also more clear when I'm in the model.
Just to clarify, so Does this mean that, for example, it's possible that I say, I do not even have to think about an exact limit for myself, because the other bidder will buy way before I start bidding?
If I have such a belief, yes.
And then noticing that they did not bid, it says, oh, then I have to think about my limit.
Yes, so like that, what you're describing right now is somehow an off-path belief. The way how we will have our beliefs here is we have some full support assumptions, so you don't have really off-paths. But basically, the basic intuition that I believe that and that will also have in our worst case belief is basically, I always believe the opponent will buy the price at the current price or the next price, so that I don't have a chance to wait for the next lower price. But then I learned, well, I have received the next offer, so it cannot be that type. So I have to update this, and then I'm putting again more weight on the types who would buy or accept the current price and so on. And this is the behavior that somehow gives you both an inconsistency, because you're always putting the weight on the highest possible type at the moment, but also gives you then the mechanism that we will see gives us more revenue for the seller. So that's, I think, more or less the intuition. Okay, so we have to care about dynamic inconsistency. And first, if you have dynamic inconsistency, we cannot apply the standard concepts that are used without ambiguity. And it's also a question, how do we define value, or how do we compare this? And then there's this additional issue in this setting here, is the increase of, or the valuation of the revenue equivalence principle only due to the dynamic inconsistency or due to ambiguity. So that's what I want to show you. We look at that option with the independent private value setting, just one good. Each buyer has ambiguity about the valuation of the other buyer. They are ambiguity-averse, but I will assume or imply some kind of belief formation process that gives us back dynamic consistency.
Okay. So no standard solution concept could be used, but the strategy concept is standard.
It's just, you cannot use, but I mean, it's no, you cannot use like Bayesian perfect equilibrium because you don't have the single.
But the dynamic inconsistency relates to the strategy concept, right?
Yes, you would change it.
It characterizes strategies, right? The strategy concept is the same. In each and every possible situation I am in, I will determine what I will do.
Yes. Yes, the strategy concept will be exactly like this. I'm making a plan for each price, will I accept or not accept? It's just basically about the beliefs.
So how does it relate to subgame perfection?
We will have the issue here that is that why you cannot use the standard concepts, because your belief is changing. Bayesian updating does not work anymore, and therefore your ex-ante optimal plan is no longer equivalent to an interim optimal plan. And with classical equilibrium settings, you don't have this issue. So we basically try to get that exactly subgame perfection, and this is the kind of backward induction that we will do for the beliefs, and that gives us back some kind of a law of iterated expectation. That's why we can do the backward induction.
Can't we have backward induction unless the price space is finite?
What we have here. Let me go to the model and then we can discuss all this. So that's what we want to do, what I want to do in this paper. So just a few words about the literature. So there's some literature on ambiguous auction, ambiguous mechanism design, but all of them have dynamically inconsistent behaviors. So it's not clear how dynamic consistency would influence designs. And the method that I'm using to get back dynamic consistency is related to rectangularity, which has been studied mostly in decision theoretical setting, except from game theory paper by me. And but the difference here is now, and we also become more clear when I define the model, that we have some uncertainty about the timing here. That's why we cannot define rectangularity directly from this decision theory, also because we have to consider this auction setting. So it's not straightforward to apply it, but I will use this technique, and it's basically a way of reasoning like that gives us backward induction. Because if I know that my worst case belief tomorrow is different from my worst case belief today, I'm getting somehow more skeptical about the beliefs I could have today, and it just makes anti-belief set to incorporate this possible change. That's a basic intuition, but I'll explain you to this more detail. So I start with the setting, equilibrium analysis, and if I have time at the end, I have some comparison with the existing literature so far. But this only effect. Okay. So the setting, we have very basic, we have one indivisible good. The seller has a valuation of 0, he's risk neutral and ambiguity neutral, so it's not unambiguous belief. He knows that the distribution of the valuation of both buyers is equal to 2. So we have a symmetric homogeneous setting for the buyers, so the valuation of both buyers is drawn by the distribution of F, and the seller knows this distribution. Just because he has more experience, for example, that's why he doesn't have them. We have 2 buyers, each buyer has its private valuation B, which is drawn from F, it's privately known. They are risk neutral, but that's where the ambiguity comes in. They have ambiguity about the valuation of the other buyer. And this ambiguity is basically characterized by an epsilon ball around the F distribution. So they also think that it's the same distribution as the buyer, so the true distribution, but there's some epsilon, this epsilon, they are not really sure if it's really F, could be anything close to F. Not anything else, doesn't have to be close to F. It could be anything else. Since F here has full support, this always collapses. So just a few comments on this first. This kind of definition ensures us that the true distribution is always in the set. So it's always, so there's no complete disagreement on beliefs or something. F is always in this. Second, the seller has more information because he knows the true F, and the buyer just has this epsilon ball. And of course, they have private information about their own valuation, so this is about the distribution of the other. Okay. Let me give you an example just to make this a little bit more clear. So suppose the true distribution is just uniform 0 to 1. That's just the uniform distribution. If we move this, like if we multiply this to 1 minus epsilon, we just get this. Now let's suppose we choose one L, which is just the uniform distribution on 0, 5, and 1. If again, we multiply this with epsilon, we get this. So the combination of these two is then just this red part here. So we have the same weight as the original uniform distribution from 0 to 0.75, and then we have this key. So a buyer with that distribution would put more weight on the 0.75 one interval than the true distribution. And this L is just one example. This L could be anything in the set of distributions. It's just an example to show you how this comes. So you see, we are keeping a full support assumption, which is important to not to have to think about the about out of equilibrium or non-zero events. But yeah, we have this overweighting certain regions of the okay, that's just an example. So we have this ambiguity version for the buyers. How does it influence their behavior? We assume the max-min preferences, so they maximize their worst case expected utility given the set of beliefs. So given this distribution they consider, they look at the worst case distribution in this set. And then depending on this epsilon, this set is even very, very close to the true one, to the F. The epsilon is very small, you have very high weight for the true distribution, just a very low weight for anything else. And if epsilon is large, they consider very large. So this is how they evaluate the output of different strategies. So in the setting, the worst case, it's somehow very simple because it's always the valuation of the other buyer is high. So best case belief will always put more weight on high valuations of the opponent, but because an opponent with a higher valuation will accept higher prices. So that's always the best case. That's due to the setting relatively easy. Then the question is, how do we update beliefs here? If we have a set of beliefs, how can we update the set of beliefs? And the updating rule that we are assuming here is prior by prior Bayesian updating, which basically means we apply a Bayes rule to each belief in the set. So the set of beliefs plus Bayes rule pointwise for each of the beliefs, and then we get a set of Bayesian updates. But as I said, the dynamic inconsistency does not rely on this updating rule. There are also something like maximum likelihood updating rules, so you have different weights and different beliefs, but also there you have dynamic inconsistency. Then what's happened in the game? Well, the seller proposes a price, buyer can accept this price or not. If a buyer accepts this price, he has to pay the price, he gets the object with his valuation. So the output, the payoff of a buyer indicates that he buys the object, it's just his valuation minus the price. If he doesn't buy the object, it's zero. For the seller, it's just the price in the case of objects. That's just standard. What's really new is just the ambiguous belief. Okay. So, what kind of auction will I study? Basically, what's the timing here? So we have this decreasing price auction. So the timing is as follows. At the beginning, the seller proposes a sequence of prices. And this sequence of prices is fixed. It proposes this in the beginning, and that basically gives us our mechanism, our auction. Then in each stage, there's first a coin toss. I will come back to this in a minute, but this coin toss, the pair coin, basically decides who is approached first. So we approach one of the buyers first, propose him the current price. If he accepts the price, the game is over. If he rejects, we go to the next buyer, propose him the same price. If he accepts, the game is over. If not, we go to the next stage. Again, toss a coin, approach one of the buyer first, and so on, until one of the buyer accepts, or until we reach the final price. So, why do we need this coin toss? First, it's a tie-breaking rule. What happens if both buyers would accept the same price? The reason why we do it as a first step in reaching each round is to have symmetry. We can, most of the results I will show you today, don't rely on this. We could also toss a coin at the beginning once, and then one buyer is always the first and the other buyer is always the second. If I go to this comparison to the literature, then this is something that's important. Let me talk about this in the case I'm coming to this part. So for the moment, just think about this as a tie-breaking rule, and we keep this in each stage to have a symmetry gain and not think about the first and second mover. Okay, so that's the timing. In each round, we have this lower price. So the question is, how do we find a good price sequence? So basically, what we want to show is that we can find a price sequence such that the seller can extract almost all. So we look at just one specific price sequence, and no worries, you don't have to remind this. It's just this feature here, the delta here, basically that gives us a description of the price gap. So how much gap do we have between each prices? So the sequence is decreasing. We start with the price of 1, that's the highest possible valuation, and then we sequentially decrease this price, and this delta describes the difference between the prices in each range. Anything, and you see there's an epsilon, so this price sequence also depends on the degree of ambiguity aversion, so how large the set of the buyers. But just keep in mind, delta is how much larger delta is, we have a larger gap between the prices, smaller delta is. The seller chooses the sequence of prices, and he also chooses how many prices we offer. So he chooses how many prices to offer, and that's important because if he makes the gap between prices smaller, he needs more prices to have the whole interval from 0 to 1 for the lower valuations. So for smaller price gaps, we need more prices, so more rounds at the auction. If the price gaps are larger, we can have less rounds to get this.
The formula assumes that the seller knows the ambiguity, the extent of ambiguity of the.
Yes. So everything what we have seen until to this point is common knowledge.
The real.
I think we could also work with an estimate here. Basically, if you just make it like larger than smaller than needed, then you need perhaps more rounds, but like, yeah. The results are basically just like for every epsilon, we can find something such that we can just work with upper bounds and lower. Okay. So that's the pricing. Yes.
And does the seller know the I function, the other option?
Which function?
From the weighting of back a bit, like the other belief of the buyers, the I function,
Well, this could be anything.
but does the seller know it?
So this will be changing depending on what is the worst case. So, but this here is I can be anything. It can be any distribution on any distribution. Doesn't even have to be full report, so it could be anything. Since this is common knowledge, so the seller can, if you have a rational seller, he knows what will be the worst case for each buyer, so then he will know what is the, let's say, realized I function here to get our worst case. To some extent, because there's no uniqueness or something like that, but he knows the worst case from, because all this is common. Okay. So that's the price sequence. So what are strategies here is strategies are plans to accept or not accept each of the following or each of the prices. So it's basically just the plan. Do I accept P1? Do I reject P1? Do I accept P2 and so on? We make a few assumptions. So first, if there is some indifference, buyers will choose the seller preferred option. And seller preferred option, it's just to avoid difference consideration. So if the buyer is indifferent between accepting and rejecting an object, he accepts the price. If he is indifferent between accepting different prices, he will accept the higher price. So he will choose the seller preferred option. And then, of course, since the payoff of the buyer is decreasing in the price and increasing in his valuation, if he decides to accept a price, he will also accept any price which is lower than this price. So we basically just have to think about the first price that he will start, where he will start to accept. And then everything else follows from this monotonicity. So what does it give us? Well, if we can just focus on the first price that the buyer accepts, we can look at so-called cutoff strategies. So we can just find intervals of types, and each of this interval characterize the types that start to buy at this price. So these are the types that accept PK and any price which is lower than PK. And just keep in mind, we are decreasing prices, so prices with the higher time index are lower prices. So PK1 is smaller than PK. And in the paper, so I don't want to go too much into this technical detail, but in the paper, we show that you can basically restrict to this cutoff strategies. So for any equilibrium, you can always find data such that for any equilibrium we will enter the so we will just look at this kind of cutoff strategies, and then we just have to think about this cutoffs. Okay, where exactly are these to characterize an equilibrium?
So if there is an inconsistency, if there would be inconsistency, that would be in the graph.
Yes.
Ex-ante, I would say
Exactly. Ex-ante, this guy.
0.6.
Exactly.
But after the second one, I would say 0.5.
Exactly. This guy would ex-ante say I'm accepting PK, but then later he's already accepting PK minus 1. Exactly. So what kind of information do they learn? They learn about the valuation of the other buyers, because they learn if the other buyer hasn't accepted the prices that were offered so far, then his valuation has to be lower than the types who would have had accepted this prices. So by observing, or by seeing the clock running down and observing lower prices, I learned that the type of my opponent has to be lower. So it can just be in an interval which is lower than these cutoffs. However, since we have this coin toss, suppose I get the offer PK. I don't know if I'm the first to get this offer, or if the other buyer already rejected this offer. So from getting this offer, I only learn that the other buyer rejected any price which is strictly higher than this. So I only know that he rejected everything that's strictly higher. And then we can just do Bayesian updating on this. So since we have the cutoff strategies, I know the types who would have accepted prices higher than PK. I know that they haven't accepted, so I know the type has to be lower than these types. So our internal set of internal beliefs is just the prior by prior Bayesian update. And so the Bayesian update of each of these beliefs in this epsilon contamination given this information. That's the information I learned during the game and how I update beliefs. So what is now the worst case? Suppose I get the offer PK. Then my decision to accept this offer or reject depends on the payoff I get from rejecting and accepting. So I'm comparing the payoffs from accepting the offer and from rejecting the offer. If I accept the offer, then I get my valuation minus the current price. If I reject, perhaps I get the next lower offer, and then I can accept the next offer, which is PK plus 1. However, there's this probability that the game ends before I get this price. So my worst case expected utility basically depends on the probability that if I reject the current offer, how likely is it that I will get the next one? So I'm comparing these two events, the safe payoff from accepting the offer right now and waiting one period, but the ambiguous payoff, ambiguous probability that I might not get the next one. And how does it look like? Basically depends on two events. There are two possible events that could end the game before I get the next offer. The first event is that the other buyer, that I'm the first right now, and the other buyer can still accept the current price. And the second event is that we go to the next period, but I'm the second, and the other buyer can accept the next price before it's my round. So these are the two events that are important to figure out what's the probability that I get the next offer. And if we look at this, well, remember we have this cutoff types, and this cutoff just tells us what price do they accept. So if I got the offer at PK, and the event that the other guy still accepts the current price means that the other guy has to be a type in this part here, because these are the types that will accept the current price. So my worst case belief that gives the highest possible probability to these types. Because these are the ones who accept the current offer, so these are the ones who would have like the highest possible probability to the event that we don't reach the next stage. The second event is that we reach the next stage, but then these guys have zero probability because otherwise we would not reach the next stage. But if we reach the next stage, then the worst case is now that the other buyer accepts the next price before it's my turn. So if he is the first, he accepts, so the worst case for this period gets the highest possible probability of the type who accepts the next price. So you see, these two worst cases different. This one gets the highest probability to this event. It still has some probability for this because we have a full support distribution, but the highest possible weight on this part here. In the next period, we have the highest possible weight on this part here. And now to see what is my expected profit of waiting, I have to combine somehow to these two worst cases, because both of these events can end the game before I get the next one. And this is where the dynamic inconsistency usually comes in, because you have the two different worst cases. Now the question is basically, how can we combine them to get the back dynamic consistency? And this is what rectangularity is doing, and basically rectangularity allows us to use both worst cases. To say we are evaluating this event here with this worst case, and this event with this worst case, and we combine them. And the way how we do this is, if you just think about Bayesian, just ignore this for a moment, just think about Bayesian updating. You have the Bayesian update of a belief. If you multiply this with the marginal probability of ending there, you get back the prior. It's just marginal times Bayesian update gives you back the prior. Bayesian update, rectangularity basically allows you to combine different marginal and different updated beliefs. So we are combining the probability that we reach next stage, evaluated with the worst case for period k, times the probability if we reach next stage that I get the next one. But this is evaluated with the worst case of k plus 1. So I'm combining these two worst cases and basically match them together, put them together. This gives me a new, in some cases, this will give you a new prior distribution that might be outside of this original set of distributions. What rectangularity now is doing is say, well, I know that tomorrow I will have a different belief from today, but I also know that today this is my worst case belief. So if I know that there's a discrepancy between these two beliefs, I'm considering this and enlarging my belief set to be consistent with this kind of operation. So I'm somehow closing my belief set under this operation. And that's like a convex hull is now the rectangular hull. So we are closing the belief set under this operation and allowing to any belief be that we can generate that this kind of combination being interpreted. And this basically gives us backward induction because it ensures you that your ex-ante worst case is just ante worst case expected utility just the weighted sum of the internal worst case expected utility. And this rectangular hull is always, that's a formal definition, but that's what I just told you. This rectangular hull always exists, so we can always close our belief that under this relation. We can always construct it with basically a backward induction procedure. And that's similar to the decision theoretical literature, what they show for the properties of the rectangular. So we allow the agents to take into account that tomorrow my belief will be different, and therefore, because I know that I will have different beliefs today and tomorrow, I am enlarging my beliefs that today to be consistent with my future worst case belief. So consider that I'm having different beliefs. That's the intuition. So with this, then we can finally define our equilibrium concept. And we are basically just starting a perfect Bayesian equilibrium with rectangularity on top. So we assume that our ex-ante belief set is this rectangular hull. And the nice thing is when you start with a rectangular belief set, the Bayesian set will stay rectangular. So you just have once to find the ex-ante belief set rectangular, and then you have rectangularity for any stage.
It's a perfect Bayesian equilibrium with a certain structure of beliefs.
Yes.
That is the restriction.
Yes. Definitely. But we somehow need this restriction here to study it, because otherwise we don't know how to do. Well, I don't know how to do this in the dynamic study. So we have the prior Bayesian updating. So that's just Bayesian updating for ambiguous settings. And then at each stage we are maximizing. So basically we are looking for the best outcome in each stage, given this rectangularities. And due to the rectangularity, the effect in consistency, so ex-ante optima will be different, will be the same as interim optimum. So we have consistent behavior. Okay, so that's the equilibrium. So what do we get with this? Well, to find or to see what this is doing in our setting here, we have to characterize this cutoffs. So basically, we have to find the type who's the difference between accepting and rejecting. And you can characterize it, so you can calculate the worst case belief based on this two worst cases I just showed you. And then the cutoff type is just the one who is indifferent between waiting one period and getting the next lower price, but this only happens with the probability and buying right now at this price. From this, we can calculate all the cutoffs and you get a characterization of them. And the main result is then basically for any degree of epsilon, for any degree of ambiguity, for any size of this epsilon contamination, we can find a valuation such that we can construct the price sequence such that every buyer with a valuation higher than this valuation feature accepts one of the prices. And the ex post surplus for the buyers is always smaller equal than that. So none of the buyers, none of the types has an ex post surplus greater than that. And now by making delta arbitrarily small, we extract almost all surplus for the seller. And the basic intuition is the seller by decreasing the price gap at some point, the worst case somehow kicks out the value that you get from waiting, and therefore you accept higher prices. And if you design this data, the price gap in the right way, you can extract almost all surplus from the buyers.
Can you go back to this probability where you have the G functions and two expected probability and one more? So that the blue one has to the stage Q1 is reached, conditional upon that, I guess local is 50%, because once you are there, it is not.
No, because if it's not only the 50%, it's if the other one gets the offer first, he can still reject the current offer.
Oh.
So it's not only the time cost, it's also will the other one accept it or not. So that's why again the ambiguity comes also in for this part. And that's why for this blue part is these types who are basically the dangerous ones, and for the pink one, these types are the ones who would accept it currently, and therefore I have a high weight here, and here I have a high weight here. So we can extract almost all surplus. Let me show you an example. That's just uniform distribution. There's just 7 rounds, so you see we don't cover all the types here. It's just otherwise it's getting a mess with the computation. So we have 7 rounds. This here tells you the lowest type who would accept this price. So any type with a valuation between 1 and this 0.9678 will accept the price 0.95. And so on, any type between these two values will accept this price and so on. So the highest possible end that the buyer who accepts this price is the buyer with the highest valuation that accepts this price, so it's a buyer with a valuation of 1, so he has a maximum rent of 0.65. And similar this here, it's just the difference between this types and this one. So you see all those maximum rents are below delta, are below the price gap. So the maximum rent of one buyer is always below 0.0. Compared to the setting without ambiguity, the setting without ambiguity would just be optimal to bid half-year valuation, requirement valuation. And then the expected, the rent would just be in the case where you get the object, would be just half-year valuation. So the buyer ends up with really, really low valuation compared to the non-ambiguous. That's the best case, but that's not so bad. That's with the times 1 minus epsilon is the best case. The worst case probability of getting to the next round. So you see it's still very high here because of course, as I know that a large amount of I still have a uniform distribution at F, so I still have a positive support on all types below this value. But I'm putting a higher, like slightly higher weight on this type, so would accept this. So my worst case B.
Are these prices optimal for the seller?
I don't know. It's just one price sequence. Optimal would mean here something like you can extract even more, but since we can like extract almost all surplus already, it's a little bit, what is even more here? Is it like having less price steps to accept it fast, to extract it faster somehow? But I don't know. It's just one that shows we can extract almost all surplus. And we can do this even without applying dynamic consistency. And that's now where we come to the comparison to the existing literature, because the existing literature relies on consistent planning approach. So the idea is there, well, I know that my future self will do something else from what I'm doing right now. I don't adjust my beliefs, but I consider that tomorrow I will do something different than my optimal plan. So it's like a backward induction procedure, but not for the beliefs, only for the strategy. With this, you get dynamically inconsistent behavior. And this is what has been studied in the setting so far. Basically, this kind of consistent planning instead of rectangularity. They also show that you can extract almost all surplus, but, and that's what, as far as I know, was the first time that this has been shown in the literature, is that actually in this setting here, we really get completely different equilibrium strategies for both settings. So usually, because both are based on backward induction, both rectangularity and consistent planning, at the end we have different interpretation of the strategies, but we end up with the same equilibrium. Here this is not the case. And so in this setting, the buyer accepts even higher prices with the rectangularity. Even with consistent planning, the seller can extract almost all surplus, but with rectangularity, the buyer accepts even higher prices, so we don't need to make the price gap as small as with consistent planning. So basically, you can have larger price gaps and still extract. So the reason why this is the case is the rectangularity allows us to evaluate these two events that ends the game as different risk cases. So I have a different risk case for this event that the opponent accepts the current price, and a different risk case for the event that the opponent accepts the next price before it's my turn. And this is based on two different risk cases, and rectangularity combines this. Consistent planning evaluates evaluates those events with the same beliefs. So it basically evaluates both events with this belief that gives you the worst case here. And therefore, it gives the lower probability to this one. And therefore, the probability that I get the next offer is higher under consistent planning. So consistent planning considers that myself tomorrow will think something different here, but this event happens before I learn that it's tomorrow. And therefore, it gives a different way, a bit different belief to this event. So under consistent planning, those events are evaluated with this pink belief, and with rectangularity, I have these two different beliefs. Therefore, with rectangularity, I have a worse case belief, and therefore I accept even higher prices. And if you compare this in the same example you have already seen, here you see again the types to accept the first price, and you see with rectangularity, the types to accept the price 0.95 are even closer to 0.9 than with consistent planning. And the maximum range is lower here than here. So the maximum range of the rectangular guys is even smaller. So we need somehow smaller price gaps here to get the same range as here. Sorry, we can have larger price gaps here to get the same as here, so we need somehow less steps to get the same. Okay.
So this rectangularity is smoothing the expectation, whereas without it, that would be inevitable because of the statement some jump.
Yes, somehow.
And all this doesn't affect the ambiguity effect, so the two can be separated, dynamic consistency and ambiguity. because the smoothing is possible.
Yes. So this rectangularity allows you to consider that I have ambiguous beliefs. So basically, it assumes that players are aware of having this ambiguous belief, and I'm aware of this inconsistency across my beliefs. And therefore, I'm able to handle it, which is of course very sophisticated. But on the other hand, I think the step, if I know that I will think something different tomorrow, then making the step that I'm getting more skeptical about what I'm thinking today, just because I know that tomorrow I will think something different, it's not so strange. Like getting skeptical if I know that I'm self-different, if I'm able to consider this, that tomorrow I believe something different, but this is also what consistent planning assumes. So basically the difference between consistent planning and rectangularity is that in one setting, I'm aware that I'm doing something different tomorrow, and in the other setting, I adjust my belief to this.
You have this, that you have sophisticated present bias people who can make some weakness or whatever, I don't know, but they're present bias.
Exactly, and it's exactly the opposite route, right? There you are able to commit to your current. That's also one of the other ways how dynamic consistencies get back in this kind of settings with ambiguity, that they assume this updating rule where you only update beliefs that are consistent with your current worst case belief. And then you're basically sticking to your current belief, and therefore you can commit to your current optimal action. Okay, so let me just quickly conclude. So we look at dynamically consistent behavior in ambiguous Dutch setting with two ambiguity-averse bias and ambiguity-neutral seller. And with the rectangularity, we can show that the seller can extract almost all surplus, even if the bias behaves dynamically consistent. So if we think about this rectangularity, we can show the revenue equivalence does not hold in this ambiguous setting, even with dynamic consistency. And then we have even higher bidding strategies, so higher in the sense they're accepting higher prices than compared to this previous set, which only looked at consistency. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you very much.
We have time for one or two more questions.
Maybe a naive question, but can this line of thought be applied to the ascending flow function as well? Because I don't see why not.
Yes. I completely agree it should work. The problem is really getting this rectangular belief, it's quite tricky. And that's actually what took me the most of the time here to find the right way to get the rectangular belief. I also have another project where I look at rectangularity in persuasion, and there also basically the most tricky part is to think about, okay, how can I get rectangularity here? So I don't know the real answer. Because I solved the same here, and it turned out to be much more complex than I expected. But I think it should work.
Thank you.
Just maybe a minor remark. In Március, somebody was working on bisection auctions. So I don't know, it seemed to me that it's kind of geometric, at least a geometric relation on the prices that the seller optimally sets. So I wonder if there's a kind of a relation between the two.
No idea. So do you know who is this?
Oh, I should probably be able to look it up.
Okay, it would be great. I have no idea.
So then the idea is that if you have absolutely no idea about the valuation of the object, then you start with the price. If there are multiple bidders, then you double the price. If there are, or how do you say, if there are no bidders, then you, no, if there are multiple, you double the price. If there are no bidders, then you halve the price. And it's always playing with this doubling or halving or something like that.
But this is then on the side, uncertainty on the side of the seller or of the buyer?
I think it's on the side of the seller.
Because the example of literature that I mentioned there, they also, because here I don't have ambiguity for the seller, right? There are some papers who also study this. Then it depends a lot on if you can define something like being more ambiguous or less ambiguous.
But I mean, how can you have no ambiguity on the side of the seller? So as long as the value of the object depends on the valuation of the buyers, right? So ultimately.
Well, yes, but we have risk, but we don't have ambiguity. So the seller does not know the private valuation, but he knows the distribution of the private valuation. Yeah, there are some people working, like playing around with the other papers that have different assumptions on this. Then usually if you have like something like the seller is less, like has a smaller set than the buyers, for example, you can show that the seller can still construct a mechanism that gives him a higher surplus, such that he constructs a mechanism that hedges himself against ambiguity, but not the buyers. Then basically the question is, can you construct something like this? Yeah, but would be nice if you could send me the reference.
I give a minor remark. I enjoyed very much the lecture, but maybe not everybody knew that when you mentioned that if there is the classical claim, when bidding is just half of private valuation, this goes back to the early 60s weekly. And John Harshani generalized the setup. So you might have moved this one equation to the introduction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you very much.
Touching on is much better.